Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are so excited to be with you today. This is our first Bentonville First webinar broadcast. My name is Reverend Dr. Michelle Morris, and I'm the lead pastor here at First United Methodist Church in Bentonville. Throughout the month of October, our church is focusing on 4 key aspects of community life so that we can get reacquainted with our community as we are hopefully navigating out of this pandemic. Our hope is to learn about who our community is now and to spark new responses to needs and possibilities that are now part of who we are in Bentonville. So this week's webinar focuses on nonprofits, and joining us from our community for this discussion are 3 panelists. I'd like to introduce them to you. We're going to start here with our first panelist is Cindy Acree. Cindy is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity for Benton County, serving in this capacity for 2.5 years. Cindy is a Bentonville City Councilwoman and former Colorado State legislator with a 20-plus year legal and business background and degrees from Southern Methodist University. I have 2 degrees from SMU, by the way, Cindy. So we.
Oh, my
She also has a degree from University of Denver College of Law. Her personal story is one of overcoming adversity as she struggled for 15 years with epilepsy, then survived a paralyzing stroke to make a remarkable recovery, finding hope and creating an exceptional quality of life. It's a wonderful story, Cindy. I'd love to hear more about that sometime. And then Habitat for Humanity Benton County is an affiliate of Habitat for Humanity International. Founded in 2000, they have built over 84 homes for poverty families in Benton County. Habitat is a nonprofit Christian housing organization whose goal is to eliminate poverty housing from within Benton County and to partner with the community to make a decent shelter a matter of conscience as well as action. So Cindy, welcome. We're glad to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
All right. And then our next panelist is Lisa Martins. She's the Second Street Pantry Mission volunteer and president. Second Street Pantry Missions has been functioning as a food pantry for 10 years. In those 10 years, they have also added monthly personal care and diaper distribution, financial assistance to those facing utility shutoff or eviction, and snack packs for 2 local junior highs. Lisa has been an active volunteer for 5 years working in data entry for our benevolence team and pantry team, picking up and shelving the food bank order and filling the bags for weekly food distribution. She has also held board positions of secretary, vice president, and president. Second Street Pantry Missions is also a ministry operating out of our church here at First United Methodist Church in Bentonville. So thank you so much for joining us today, Lisa, especially on, this is your disbursement day, right? This is a big, busy day for y'all.
It's a busy day.
Yeah, so thanks for squeezing us in.
Our pleasure.
And then we have Debbie Martin with us, who is no relation to Lisa Martins. Their names are spelled slightly differently. Debbie is the executive director of Havenwood. Havenwood helps single mothers and their children move from crisis to self-sufficiency. Also, due to some grants through COVID assistance, they offer rental assistance and rapid rehousing for those experiencing housing insecurity. The Havenwood program meets basic needs by providing a safe and secure place to live. Their facility houses 15 fully furnished apartments, complete with private kitchen and bath for each single parent family. In their nearly 30-year history, Havenwood has been blessed to walk beside more than 500 families, including more than 1,100 children. So Debbie, we're glad to have you with us as well.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so we want to make sure that we have as much time as possible to discuss today's topic. So let's get right to our questions. We also encourage those of you that are joining us on Facebook to share your questions in the comments. If we have time towards the end of the hour, we're going to go until 1 o'clock for this. If we have time towards the end of the hour, we'll take some of those. But let's start out with this first one here. So I would like each of you to describe your work. In particular, who are the people you serve? And what issues or challenges do they typically face? So we'll just start with how we went to introductions. So Cindy, if you would share a little bit about your work.
Yes, we work with families in poverty, all type of families and all races. We have American Indians. We serve a large Hispanic population, a large Caucasian, African American, and some Marshallese. And that's the demographic in Northwest Arkansas. And it's interesting that all the participants on this call all share in the continuum of care for our families that we serve. And we serve only poverty level families, but often you have a family that's right at the edge and they're not making enough to be self-sufficient. They need a little help, and we want to provide permanent homes. We do a good job in Northwest Arkansas with temporary or emergency shelter, but we don't do a good job in providing permanent homes, particularly home ownership, in a way that could move our families from poverty to self-sufficiency. And I think that that's what I know Debbie's trying to do with Havenwood, and Lisa, you're doing in helping our families sustain themselves. It's all an important role that we play. So our job, our homes that we build are not free. Our families pay mortgages, but they're interest-free mortgages only for the cost of the build. And we use 400 volunteers or more to build each house. So this keeps the cost low, and many times a rent for or mortgage payment for a 3-bedroom house is under $500 a month. And when the average price of housing in Northwest Arkansas for a 2-bedroom apartment is $800 or more, families can't sustain that on minimum wage income. So our goal is not only to provide the houses, but to make sure they stay self-sufficient. So we don't walk away after they move into their home. We help them when they face life's challenges, when they have something like the pandemic or a death in the family or a loss of a job, and we come back in and help connect them with resources.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Lisa, why don't you share now what you do with Second Street Pantry?
The Second Street Pantry is helping families or individuals that are facing food insecurity. Obviously, those are some of the same people that Cindy's team is helping, that people that are in poverty, but it may be chronic poverty or it may be situational. Maybe they just recently had a job loss. Sometimes we get people that just recently moved to the area and they haven't quite started their job yet, but they're going to start in a couple of weeks. So they have a transition period, or there's been some type of disruption. An illness is a huge disruption because we know what the healthcare system is like and what those costs can be just devastating on a family. I think people would be surprised to know the number of working families we have that come and get pantry food. We have a number of senior citizens that are on Social Security that are supplementing with the food pantry. So it's people that have maybe a chronic situation or just situational, lots of people with children, and a lot of people with jobs, but just can't quite make ends meet. And getting some groceries kind of helps them be able to put that money into either housing or to healthcare or other things that they need.
Okay, and Debbie, share us a little bit about your work.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us. And it's interesting that each group, we are all serving the same population. And I don't think that's by accident. Havenwood, we're a transitional housing program. We serve single moms with 1 or 2 children under the age of 10. They come to us through so many different avenues, whether it's referral or through DHS, through drug court. But the commonality with all of our families is that they have experienced some type of a crisis or trauma that has caused them to have some housing insecurity. We have women that have experienced domestic violence, trafficking, addiction, and they're really trying to just figure out how to restart their lives with their children. And so we provide case management and resource allocation and all sorts of things to really kind of help them, life skills, parenting. But the other thing that we've done with the pandemic that has been really super exciting is we have been able to really dive into the community and help families that may not quite fit the Havenwood mold as far as, single mom with 1 or 2 children under the age of 10. Maybe it's a single mom with 3 kids, or maybe it's a family. Maybe it's a single dad. And so we've been able to provide rental assistance for those who are facing eviction. We have been able to provide, help them find housing and provide deposit, a few months of rent, utility deposit and payments, really to help them really start getting back on their feet. We work with them very intensely about paying off their fines, getting some of their debt reduced so that they can be in a position to go and see Cindy at Habitat and try to get a house, or are in a better position to go back to school. We encourage school, we encourage work, we encourage, really trying to figure out how do we just reset and hopefully address this generational poverty and the generational addiction and all of the things that have just followed them from, grandparents and parents and now to themselves. So we really work hard trying to help them just set up for success.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah, it is interesting that all of you do share in many ways the same population, or at least a population that has similar challenges before it. That also makes me wonder, I know as churches, we have struggled with how to kind of keep our volunteer base active with all of the restrictions. So I would love if you all could reflect on how the pandemic has impacted your work, both with those that you serve and with your volunteer base. So maybe this time let's start with Lisa, because I know a little bit of what you all have done. Share what Second Street Pantry has had to do.
So when the pandemic first hit, we had to really pivot because the church building shut down and everything we did was done in the church building. I'm proud to say that the team reacted quickly and we never missed a Tuesday of being able to give groceries out. We immediately started with an outside delivery where people would stay in their cars. We would check them in and then set their groceries on a table, and then they would come pick those up. We had a core group of volunteers to limit the number of people in the building that were comfortable working around each other. We've known each other for years, so we knew that we were all being careful when we weren't at the pantry, always masked. And that was the first thing we did. The things that did get interrupted where we were providing a hot meal every Tuesday night, we immediately had to shut down providing that meal. It just wasn't safe. And we have not been able to restart that. The pandemic still is not allowing that to happen safely. The other thing we did is for financial help, people would come in person and we would do a personal interview and make a decision. Well, our volunteer base just wasn't able to do that safely. So we had to switch to an email system where people would email, provide electronic documents. We would then call them and do the interview and be able to make that work. And that has actually worked quite well. It's probably easier on our clients, quite frankly, than having to come up here and sit and wait for someone to interview them. They can get on with their lives because they're trying to work and raise children and do all those things everybody else is doing. We never missed a beat. Our donations continued to come in gratefully. So we were able to still continue that care. One thing we did have to do on our financial care when we missed a few weeks and then we got our electronic system up. Initially last summer, we were overwhelmed with requests. We couldn't handle them financially and we couldn't handle them just with the volunteers that we had. There just weren't enough bodies to answer all the phone calls. And I know talking to some of the other organizations that give some financial assistance, they had the same thing. So we had to narrow our scope to just Bentonville, Bella Vista, and Centerton. And that's left some people out of us being able to help them, but it became manageable and we had money to sustain that then. We have, at what point in time we can open it up to all of Benton County, which is what we were serving previously, we will. But we still have seen that keeping it smaller is more sustainable for us. Everything else, all of our suppliers, really, we didn't miss anything. The food bank has noticed some interruption in their supply chain like everyone else. We didn't miss out on toilet paper because we have a vendor that graciously supplies all the toilet paper. So we were probably one of the few people that had ample rolls of toilet paper. But things like protein were harder to get. This year, we're noticing that prices of food have gone up from the food bank. And one thing that's happened at the first of this year, our numbers were high. We had a lot of people that would come through that were new, so they'd never been to a food bank before or a food pantry before because they had suddenly lost their jobs because of the pandemic. 2021 has been a little bit different in that our numbers have dropped off. We were around 150 families a week. Now we're under 100. It went up last week, but our best guess is that with the unemployment income and the stimulus checks, that people had a little bit of a buffer there. And of course, that only lasts so long. So we kind of expect our numbers to continue to rise this year, but we did have a little bit of a drop this year.
Thanks. Debbie, how have things gone out at Havenwood?
Yeah, I mean, the same types of things that Lisa talked about, when the pandemic first hit, we had to really pivot how we do so many things. And when you have 15 families all in the same building, it makes it a little hard to do social distancing. So we had to get very creative. We had to learn how to social distance within your family, kind of. So that was interesting. We had provided group on Tuesday nights, and we used to have, a ton of volunteers that would come to watch the kiddos and allow the moms a little bit of a break and an hour to learn things. And, that had to stop. So we've tried and been pretty successful but we went to Zoom meetings, we went to Facebook Live meetings, we went to, all sorts of different ways to continue the teaching because, we didn't want to lose time working with the families. So we had to kind of pivot with that. We've now pretty much established a routine that allows the moms to come to group, and we don't necessarily, we're not in a place to open that back up for volunteers to watch the kiddos. But it's working right now. So that's really good. I think, one of the biggest things that we saw, we always knew that there were, individuals out in the community who are really, really struggling. But we didn't necessarily have the capacity to really kind of reach out and to be able to serve those families. And, I'm on the board of the COC. And I do all the coordinated entry things. So we have a by name list in the community of all the individuals who we've been able to assess that are homeless or at risk. And because of because it's so expensive to live in Northwest Arkansas, it's really very, very difficult to, even when we do, maybe we find an apartment, like Cindy said, they can't sustain. It's too difficult. And so through, honestly, a lot of COVID money, we've been able to really kind of dive in and help families that I'm quite sure we wouldn't have been able to help in any other capacity. So, that has been, it's been really good for us to be able to really kind of expand. Our demographics across the board have changed. We're serving all of Northwest Arkansas versus just Benton County. So that's really exciting as well. And, we're really kind of diving into the collaboration. We have community partners all the way through that, work with us to help our clients be really super successful. We do not duplicate efforts. If somebody else can do it better, absolutely. We're going to send families to the food pantry down the street. We're just down the street from each other. We're going to send people to Habitat. We're not going to try to do all things for all people. That's makes it super difficult. But Our volunteer base has been kind of small, but with the pandemic, but we're hopefully starting to be able to open some things up and do some things with our community. We have a community that really cares about us, but really cares, and they're just trying to figure out how to navigate our new normal.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the challenge so many of us face, is how do we be present in ways when presence is somewhat restricted, right? So Cindy, your organization relies heavily on volunteer labor. What has the challenge of the pandemic posed for you and the people that you're serving and the people that would serve alongside?
Well, it slowed down our builds. We not only couldn't get volunteers, but there was a shortage of supplies. We couldn't get lumber for a while, or we couldn't get concrete. But even more fundamental than that, what we realized is that people started isolating themselves. And so what we normally had done, focusing on building and getting volunteers, then became an outreach effort where we were actually going to homes, checking on our families, taking food and groceries, and helping them connect with resources. So we updated our community resource list extensively because it was too big for us. We couldn't do everything. And we gave a lot of mortgage assistance and deferments. We had donors who knew that what our homeowners needed would help with their mortgages. And so a lot of our fundraising went from brick and mortar to just sustainability. And we diverted funds from our builds to helping our families stay in their homes. But the other thing that we found is that we were getting different kinds of requests. Suddenly we're getting requests. We have a child that needs a wheelchair ramp because he can't get off the porch to get to a bus to go to school. Or we found out that I have a senior in Bella Vista that all she needed was have the flashing on her front porch repaired because water was dripping all through her front door. I could send somebody out to do that. We could find volunteers so it changed the way we operate a little bit. And we started focusing more on the little things. It was hard when we shut down the Restore, which covers all our operations and part of our builds, because then it became, I got to make payroll. We made a committed effort to keep our employees paid. Whatever it took, they were paid. They went home. We just made sure they were kept paid. And so it just changed our priorities a little bit. But what we found was that there were a lot of, I think, long-term effects of everybody going to Zoom, the lack of human contact, people not being able to pursue the things that they drew joy from and relaxation from. It was hard for a lot of our families to connect to church because now it was virtual and they may not have the technology, or they may live in Gravette or somewhere where they didn't have the internet. So it was important that we stay in touch with people. We did a lot of phone calls. We did a lot of drive overs where we could just leave stuff on the front porch because we knew we couldn't talk. But I think, and at Christmas even, that was hard. Making sure our families had packages and money. And, where we used to do food boxes at Thanksgiving, it became more important for us to do gift cards because we wanted them to be able to buy what they needed, not what we thought that they needed. And we knew that the food pantries were doing a great job, and a lot of churches were calling and saying, we've got fresh produce, how can we distribute it, that kind of thing. So we have tried to look at things a little differently. And that's when we developed a family support committee, where in the past it had just been a family selection committee for a home, but our program expanded. And the program has now become focused more on sustainability and good mental health and being able to access the resources with a collaboration of organizations in our county.
Yeah, it seems like one of the things that I think the pandemic did was really maybe expose some spaces, maybe educated all of us on some levels, right? Of additional things that needed to be addressed out there, and not just we didn't necessarily have to meet those, but it helped us to meet each other, right? To find out who else was doing what in town and how could we all leverage that work together.
One more thing, and I'm sure the rest of you have experienced this too. In light of that, it opened our eyes that we can't settle for our organization on just doing one house a year. There's too much need out there, and it may take a lot of effort and a lot of money, but we got to raise the bar. And so we changed our goals this year to build 5 houses. We didn't have the money for that. And you know what? God's providing the land. He's providing the money. It's happening. I'm seeing miracles happen every day that I never thought we'd be able to see. But you can't get more than what you ask for. And I really believe that we all have to start praying for more things that matter, because of all the things that we're all working on are just as important to God as they're important to us.
Right. Yeah. I frequently tell people, we act like we're worshiping a God of scarcity. We worship a God of abundance.
Amen.
It's just a question of, are we looking, right? And are we
go.
asking, and are we in community with one another? Because it's frequently the community bringing everything together that everyone goes, oh, we do have this, right? We
There you
could
go.
do this. Well, that it kind of dovetails into one of the questions that I have for y'all, which is, what are kind of the unique challenges or advantages to doing the kind of work that you do here in Bentonville? We're focusing on our series is called Bentonville First, and we're really focusing on how can we be present for Bentonville. It's great to hear some of y'all have been able to expand out beyond the borders of this town, but we're focusing in on this particular place. What are some of the challenges and the advantages to your work here? So Debbie, maybe since you have expanded out, I'll bring you back in, but you can kind of start on the reflection of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, some of the challenges that we have is, it's, again, Bentonville, it's super expensive. One, we don't have enough housing stock, period. And the housing stock we have is not conducive for those who are experiencing, low income poverty. They just can't afford it. When a 1-bedroom is, $940 a month, or more than, some of our house payments, it's super hard. Mm-hmm. So that's really one of the reasons we have had to look elsewhere, as far as to house people. And that's really difficult, especially once you've established yourself in a place. So your kids are going to school, you've got a job, you're doing well. And then now when you move out of Havenwood, you can't afford to stay here. So that means your child has to move schools. You have to either get better transportation or potentially change your job. It becomes difficult. So that's one of the challenges that we continue to face. But the positive is, we have so much in Bentonville. We have so many giving individuals who really believe in what the work that we're doing and, really want to help. It's just a matter of being able to convey that in a way that touches people's hearts. And everybody has their own thing that really kind of tugs at their heartstrings. And so, really trying to just tap in to make sure that people are feeling fulfilled and feeling like they're making a difference. Again, the pandemic has kind of changed all of those things, but it's also really kind of given people an opportunity to think, okay, I really do have a lot. And what can I share, whether it's time, talent, treasure, whatever, but providing an opportunity for individuals to, do things that we would never have thought about, as far as we have more girls right now that do not have vehicles. So transportation is super hard. We don't have buses in Bentonville, not that run constantly. So that's a barrier to try to get your child to childcare and then to work and, all of those things. But I think, all the volunteers that we have had and all the community partners that we have had have been really open to just learning how to pivot. We've all had to learn how to pivot. And so being able to just, pivot all day, every day, right?
Right.
Just being able to figure out, okay, this didn't work. or this worked 2019, it doesn't work in 2021, right? And so how do we just, instead of saying, well, this is how we've always done it,
Amen.
go back to, right? Go back to, okay, so can it look different? Like, can we look outside the box? Can we ask those questions that we haven't asked in the past? Really say, okay, be transparent with our needs. We all get a little, prideful and we don't want to ask, but the only way that people are going to know what our needs are and those feelings of isolation and depression and anxiety and all the things that are coming out of the pandemic, we have to be willing to ask. And, if the answer is no, okay, then the answer is no, but we're going to keep asking to help fulfill the needs of our families.
Lisa, what challenges do you see and possibilities of being in Bentonville?
Well, kind of echoing what Debbie said, I mean, living in Bentonville where you have some major retailers and vendors associated with those retailers is a huge advantage. We get a lot from different vendors. So that is extremely helpful. We have the Northwest Arkansas Food Bank just in Lowell. So that's a huge advantage for us because we're able to buy food for pennies on the dollar. So we really have some advantages I know other communities just don't have. We started adding diapers, which has been really popular, to what we can give out once a month. And we partnered with a diaper bank in Springfield. Well, that's only 2 hours away. Found out that there's another diaper bank starting up in Springdale, which is 30 minutes away, which is going to be a blessing. So we have a lot. We also have a community, as Debbie stated, that really has a heart for giving. We have schools that are teaching how to be empathetic and do giving in their schools. I know Lincoln Junior High has had a nonprofit fair that we've been the recipient of some funds from. Brightfield Middle School does an awesome food drive every year where we almost didn't have enough vehicles to pick it all up. The Young Men's Service League, which are teenage young men and their moms, have supported us so much in the last few years. They were doing that before the pandemic, and man, they stepped it up after the pandemic. Looked a little different. We had smaller groups of people, kind of have them here when nobody else is here. But so our advantage is a community that really does want to help. There are resources out there, more so than in some communities, if you just know how to tap into those resources. There are grants out there if you just know how to tap into those grants. So that's a huge advantage for all of us. The disadvantage, just to echo again, is the cost of living, and mainly that's housing. That seems to just take up such a huge chunk of a family's income. It's very difficult to then have anything extra. And then you have a hiccup in your employment or health, and things go south very quickly. So these are people that in many cases just are living so close to the edge, it just doesn't take much to kind of push them over. And so we need a way to be able to shore them up a little bit better. We're trying just to make sure they get fed, but as a community, there's probably other ways that we could shore them up too. Like Debbie said, transportation. You can't get to work and daycare and school in Northwest Arkansas without reliable transportation.
Yeah, Cindy, I kind of wanted to end with you on this question because you are also on the city council, and thought that you might then be able to add in a little bit of input on a kind of city view. Next week, we will be doing local government, but you can kind of talk about your work specifically, but also talk maybe in terms of what's going on in the city level as well.
Well, this is a good time to talk about that because, first of all, I think part of the assets we have in Bentonville is access to the college access to affordable retail, and access to healthcare. Big in this city, and we're still somewhat compact compared to other areas around us. We're not remote like Gravette, some of the other places. We have everything here. Transportation needs to link it, but we also have a city council that is finally getting it, that we have an affordable housing problem. And affordability, there's a debate on city council about what constitutes affordability. And high density doesn't make it more affordable. We've got to do something as a city to either relieve some of the permitting costs, do some incentives for developers that will lower the cost of development so they can lower the rents. And it's all about rent and housing. And when property is so valuable, people don't want to donate it anymore to places like me. And the developers are spending so much money developing. They want the high priced property on the street and on the big thoroughfares and that kind of thing. But the city, in fact, next week, there will be a committee of the whole meeting just to talk about affordable housing. And I'm trying to provide data and make sure that all my colleagues understand that this isn't something that just impacts the homeless. It's the working class that are on a wage where they can't afford this type of costs. We also live in a community, as you already mentioned, about the great wealth here and how that benefits us and the vendors benefit us. But on the other side of that is Northwest Arkansas is considered the, prodigy child, and that we don't need the money. So I can't tell you how many grants I've applied. Well, you're in Northwest Arkansas and we understand it. You have a lot of support there, but we also, I think, are ignoring the number of people here that are homeless. You don't see it all the time. It's not the kind of thing that's so visible, but if you're sleeping on somebody else's couch and moving from place to place every month, that's not a permanent place. That is not something that is safe and decent and permanent. And we don't do a good job of recognizing that we have people sleeping in the woods behind Cracker Barrel because they got rid of the trees at I Street and J Street. I mean, these are things that we've got to reconcile. And just because we have a lot of affluence here, it's very wonderful for philanthropy, but it's not solving our problem, because we're going to have to all come to terms with, we have a problem that's going to take all of us to resolve. So that part is still, I think, a perception problem that we need the chamber involved, downtown Bentonville involved, all the churches and city council. So from that perspective, I think we're really fortunate in a lot of ways, but we have got to address the problem head on and not trying to be politically correct. Let's talk about how it impacts us as a community. And think about it. Our job, I saw the other day, we had 850 new job postings in Bentonville. The question is, do our clients have the training to fill these jobs? So the problem isn't just making sure they have their immediate needs met, but it's helping them prepare for the future and helping them equip themselves with the tools they need in the environment we live in.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to sit down with Evelyn Jorgensen yesterday, who's the president of Northwest Arkansas Community College. She's going to be on our education webinar at the end of the month. And talking about specifically, kind of trainings that they're putting in place out at the college in order to be able to meet those kinds of needs. And when I preached this weekend to kick this series off, talked about we could be a town that eradicated poverty, but there's two ways to eradicate poverty, right? One is to be so expensive that no one who is impoverished can live here, right? That is one way to eradicate poverty, but not necessarily the just way, right?
Okay.
The other way is to make there be affordable housing available and training available that people can move in and then pull themselves out of poverty because of the opportunities that are available in this town. And that for me is a more just vision of what a town without poverty could look like, a town that works to eliminate poverty in people's lives, right? As opposed to just gating itself.
Can I interject here real quick?
Yeah,
just so
sure.
Everybody has a perspective on what we're talking about. We're talking about poverty. We're talking about a family, one person that makes a little over $12,000 a year. If you're talking about a family of four, it's a family that's living on $26,000 a year. You can't pay 50% of your income for a house and have anything left over for food and medical care and all the other things, and insurance for your car and maintenance on your car.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest problems I see with a lot of our families. They don't have transportation.
Yeah.
But the other thing I think we all have to remember is that in order to pull our families up, let me tell you a wonderful story. I had a young woman come into our restore, and she told us she got her Habitat home when she was 13. She had just gotten her college degree in fashion design and was heading to New York to start a new job in fashion design. And this young woman said, we never would have done this if it hadn't been for Habitat. So we don't realize the impact we're making with one family has generational impact.
Mhm.
It's so much bigger. And if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to continue to make big impact. But we've got to engage the rest of our community to join us and see that there's other parts of this that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I'm so glad you shared that, Cindy. This was not necessarily a question I planned to ask, but Debbie or Lisa, do either of you have a story that comes to mind that shows kind of the value of the work of this that you all do here?
Yeah, I can go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, there are so many stories. One in particular that I'm thinking of, we have a mom who she was heavy into her addiction. She lost her child to DHS. There's a lot of things that happened there, and she found herself pregnant again. She was in a domestic violence shelter. Really, very little education. She didn't have a whole lot of support. Comes to Havenwood, and through 2 years of just mentoring and her deciding here this big piece, her deciding that she wanted different for her life, right? We can't work harder at something than somebody else does, right? She decided that she wanted different. She got her daughter back. She had her second child. She's graduated from the program. She's working. She's paying all her own bills. She has no government subsidy. She even said to me, she was like, I make too much for HUD now. And I said, yeah, that's good. And she said, I don't like it. And I said, no one really likes to be an adult, right? Nobody likes to put that part on. But she's doing it, and she's doing it on her own, and her girls are thriving. And it's so cool to be able to kind of see it when it works out well. Sometimes it doesn't always work out so well, but I believe that we are continually planting seeds. And maybe while they were at Havenwood, maybe their experience wasn't super positive, but hopefully, and I've seen this, down the road, things that they were exposed to may change how, what their journey looks like. And so, it's super cool. And again, it takes the food pantry, it takes Habitat, it takes all of us. Like, this is not unique to one organization or unique to one family. It takes a lot of resources and a lot of collaboration.
Yeah. Lisa, what about you? Do you have any stories?
I don't have maybe an individual story, but I'll brag on one of our volunteers, because yes, we're providing food and some financial aid and personal care items. But another thing that one of our volunteers, Randy Erskine, does particularly well is build relationship. So when we lost the Tuesday night dinner, that's where a lot of our guests really had made friends. It was a way for them to just have a night out and have that sense of community. And the pandemic, of course, shut down a sense of community for a lot of people. And the isolation was difficult on everybody. But when you're already struggling in one area of your life, adding another layer on is never helpful. He's done a great job of building relationship with people, continuing to call people who haven't shown up for a while to see how they're doing. Recognize that another man was his place where he had lived was being sold because it was right downtown. So the land was very wealthy. So they were tearing down his apartment. helped him find another apartment and helped him move in, and then continued those relationships. He has a few gentlemen that he meets weekly for lunch to just check in on them. So building that relationship is something you don't maybe think about a pantry doing. That's really important. Sometimes we don't realize that there's people in the world that don't have a large community to call on if something goes wrong. I've got a large family and friend network, so I know I have a lot of people I could call if things went south. A lot of our people that come simply don't have that. So us building that relationship is kind of a side benefit that I think I didn't realize was happening until maybe a year ago.
Yeah. It is really true that Debbie, to kind of echo some of the things that you were saying, this weekend in my sermon, I dropped a pebble in a bowl of water and talked about that represents in some ways any act of love, right? Any act of love drops into the pool and then it ripples out, and we don't really know the distance that it travels and the effect that it carries. We just know we did that drop of the pebble, right? And in some ways, a lot of the work that you all do drop some of those pebbles. And then you hope and pray that changes lives and does transformation. But the pebble drop is the important thing to do in the first place. And so that's wonderful. And since Lisa has brought up volunteers, I would love for each of you to share kind of what your greatest needs are and how people can get involved. Understanding that we're still in the pandemic, but coming out of it, hopefully, please let us be coming out of it. So if you could kind of share how folks can get involved. And Cindy, let's start with you.
Okay, we can always take your reusable building supplies, doors, windows, furniture, household items, artwork, lamps, things that we can resell in our restore. It keeps it out of the landfill and somebody can use it in their home. Light fixtures. If you have a decon, you're tearing out a kitchen or a bathroom, let us come and harvest the cabinets and sinks, those kinds of things. You can do that and be isolated. But we also changed the way that we group volunteers. We're asking groups of friends, families, smaller groups, church groups, work groups to come volunteer on a build. And we will make sure you're social distanced and everybody's safe in that regard. But you can also volunteer in the restore. And if you're just really inclined and want to help make phone calls, we'll find a place for you. So you can call us at 335-5970 and get hooked up with the restore. They'll do pickups, or you can drop stuff off. You can shop in the restore. I have some families who they're doing a remodel, so they'll get a storage unit and come in every day and pick stuff out and just store it till they need it. It's great prices, and some of the stuff's new, flooring and paint and a lot of those types of things. You can look us up on Habitat Benton County AR.org. Sign up to volunteer online. You can ask questions, contact us. We'd love to have your help. You can make donations financially or with your heart, and prayers are always welcome.
Right. Cindy, I will share that for those of you that are part of my congregation, a good chunk of my wardrobe came from the restore in Hot Springs Village.
Awesome. They had some nice stuff too.
They had some fabulous clothes. So much of what you see me wearing comes from the Habitat Restore there. So
awesome.
All right, Debbie, how can folks get involved with your work?
Absolutely. So, again, we have so many families. I didn't give you a number in the past, but we have over 30 families that we're helping out in the community right now. And so, that's a lot of families, right? A lot of kids, a lot of things. Consumables. We always need consumables, diapers, wipes, paper towels, cleaning supplies, all the things that we all kind of take for granted. Those are things that we need to be able to give to our families. Food stamps, they don't cover a lot of those things, and that makes things really difficult. So always consumables, Always just, we're sending all our women's clothes down to Beautiful Lives so that we have a partnership with them. And then that way it kind of spreads out and more people can shop. But children's clothing, furniture, we have very small apartments, but we do take furniture. You need to call ahead of time so we can make sure something fits. Volunteer opportunities for small groups. They can redo an apartment. They can come in and we can let them know what family's moving in, and they can, get things specific for a little girl who's 2 or, a little boy who's 5 or whatever. Those are always super fun, and we can absolutely social distance you there. We sell tea. So that's another resource where we partner with Savoy Tea. And so we have a small little selection of Havenwood teas that you can go to havenwoodteaco.com and you can purchase tea. And, obviously, yes, monetarily for sure. We all need, we all need more monetary donations, but there's, like Cindy said, we are a very small staff. So if somebody just loves to answer the phone, I would love it. If somebody wants to come and help file, and our grants require a lot of documentation. And so it's a lot of paperwork. Not necessarily my jam, but somebody else might think it's the greatest thing in the world, and I would love to have them come in my office and fix it. So just a couple opportunities.
Okay, wonderful. That last little bit that you shared there, Debbie, I was reminded, there's a couple of different ways of being ordained in the United Methodist Church. One is to be a deacon and one is to be an elder. And I'm an elder, and one of the parts of being an elder is called to order the church. And a lot of people will choose to go deacon route instead of elder because they'll say, I don't like doing the paperwork. Well, I didn't go into this job for the paperwork either. That's not why I went into it either. Yeah. So I feel you on the paperwork pain. Lisa, what can people do to help out with Second Street Pantry?
So the things that you can do right now are, we'll take your money always. You can go to 2ndstpantry.org to our website, and you can see a link to donate now. Small groups could do food drives, and we can give you a list of needed items. We're now collecting items for our Thanksgiving food boxes and Christmas boxes. We have a Walmart gift registry. It's Registry for Good, and you can see Second Street Pantry on there, and there's a list of items. You never have to leave your house. You can just order it and it'll ship directly to the pantry. And, we have the women's soccer team at the Bentonville West is doing a food drive for us. So they have a list of items that we've asked for, and they're going to be doing a food drive internally there. So there's some things like that you can do. It's hard to bring a lot of extra volunteers in right now, but if you want to work from your house and answer some phone calls, or, like once a month, check the website for financial requests, I can hook you up and we can learn how to do that.
All right, wonderful. While you all have been talking and shared some of the challenges that the pandemic has posed, it's made me think of something. Yesterday, I went to a local restaurant, and I was taking something to go, and they had to give me my drink in a coffee cup. And they said, we're doing this because there's supply chain disruptions, right? These are the only cups we can get right now. And I said to the gentleman, I said, well, this is probably good for all of us. And he said, right, because now we need to know to make these things in America. And I said, actually, what I was thinking was, we've taken for granted a long time that we could just have access to everything. And not everybody lives that way. Not everybody in the world, not everybody in this country lives that way, where they can just get everything at any given moment. And so maybe we should stop and be grateful for all that we've had. And he said, oh, that's true. So I'm going to put a challenge out here to anybody that watches this webinar and say, the next time you run into a supply chain disruption, that you stop and you think about who you could give something to help them have an easier way in your life. And these 3 organizations are 3 that that could benefit from that greatly. So take what's might be a little bit of an inconvenience for you in your day and use it to do some good in the world instead. I am so grateful for the three of you and for you giving your time and sharing your stories. We are coming to the end of our time. I am thankful for this panel. I hope that this has inspired those of you that are watching now or who will watch in the days to come to think about ways that you can get involved. We will continue this conversation this Sunday at our church at First United Methodist Church here in downtown Bentonville. We have a worship service at 9 o'clock. That's our contemporary service, and 11 o'clock our traditional service. And we will be preaching on nonprofits and how we can be involved, and how, as the people of faith, we should be involved in our community in this way. You can join us in person, or you can join us on Facebook. They both were worship services broadcast on Facebook. Also, since we are talking about coming out of the pandemic, but we're not quite there yet, I do want to share this that we also have coming up in our church. It's a service of mourning and hope. We will be doing a special Wednesday evening service from 6:30 to 7:30. It is open to the community. It will again be in person as well as online. One of our music directors, Ray Wheeler, some of you may know, he taught music here for many years. He has written Requiem for COVID that we're going to debut that evening. And then Ken Weatherford, who does beer and hymns and is well known for his philanthropic work in the community as well, will also be providing music for us that evening. And we were just going to take some time to kind of reflect and mourn and name the things that we have lost this year, but also look forward to better days to come. And like I said, it's open to the community, but we would especially like to invite our medical care workers and our first responders who have had to carry so much of the bulk of our grief for us. We would love for them to attend and find space to name all that pain, and let us pray for you and be present with you in that life. So please join us. Join us that evening for that special service. And of course, join us throughout the month of October to learn more about Bentonville and how we can be in ministry with one another and really grow and shape this community. On Sunday, I put the challenge out that I think Bentonville is one of, if not the most influential town in the world per capita. It's one of the most influential towns in the world per capita. So if we make an impact here, it has the potential to ripple out, right? And make impact around the world. So any good that we can do here has an impact, like the stories that you all were sharing, that we cannot imagine how far it might go. Again, thank you so much to our wonderful panelists. And for those of you that joined us to learn about nonprofits in Bentonville, next week, as I mentioned, we will be looking at local government. The mayor will be here. We'll have another city council person. And a county judge to talk about the work that's going on in our community through our government. We hope that you've been inspired here to join in the efforts described here to learn how to make Bentonville first, so that the world can then follow. Thanks again to our panelists. Thanks to all of you that joined us. Blessings and peace to you all.
Michelle?
Yes.
I just would like to share something. I read this yesterday and it just touched me, and I want to talk about gratitude. And this is a poem I read.
Yeah.
It says, "Your terrible job is the dream of the unemployed. Your house is the dream of the homeless. Your smile is the dream of the depressed. Your health is the dream of those who are ill. Don't let difficult times make you forget your blessings."
Absolutely. That's a wonderful way to finish it up. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for putting this together. You all have a wonderful week.
Of course.
Thank you.